Hello everyone, welcome back to the SQL tutorial course. This course is brought to you by Zeedup Technologies and Services. In this tutorial course, we will learn all about SQL and then we will see its practical applications as well. So let us first understand that what is SQL. In very simple terms, SQL is a computer language that is used for the database. So if you're not familiar with the concept of database, then database is a place where the data is stored. Generally, as the traditional approach goes, the data was stored in the form of rows and columns in a table. So the language that is used to create, design and maintain this database is known as SQL. It is used to do everything in a relational database, which means the database that is related with the tables. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. Many people have been pronouncing it as Sql, but the correct pronunciation is SQL because it is not a word, it is an acronym for Structured Query Language. There are two types of database broadly classified. One is the structured database and the other is unstructured database. If we talk about the structured database, then in the structured database, the records or the information is stored in the form of rows and columns, and these rows and columns together form a table. Now when these tables are related to one another, then all the information is stored that is required. This type of database is called a relational database management system because there are relations that are established between the tables. And since it is organized in a structured fashion in a table, so this database type is known as a structured database. The second type of database, known as the unstructured database, is something that is gaining popularity nowadays. It is a recent concept. Right now there is different kinds of database, like if you just post something on your social media page, then in that case the information that you post must be stored somewhere. It could be in the form of a text, an image, a photograph or a GIF or anything else. Then there is a possibility that people comment over it, people put their reactions over it. So all this information is unstructured. There is no possible structure. Like for commenting purposes also, you can post stickers, you can post emojis, you can post each and everything. So this type of information is unstructured because we cannot give a predefined structure to this kind of information. That is why the unstructured databases like JSON are gaining popularity nowadays. If we talk about SQL, so it is used for the structured database. It is actually the standard language for the relational database system. So why should we learn SQL? SQL is structured query language. That is a computer language and it is used to do each and everything for the database, for the relational database, like creating a database, storing the data in the database, changing the data, retrieving the data from it, and if you want, you can even delete the data. So these four operations, that is creation of the database, retrieval of the information from the database, updation of the database as the time goes, and the deletion of the information is known as CRUD. These CRUD operations can be performed over a relational database using SQL. All the relational database management systems like MySQL, MS Access, Oracle, SQL Server, etc. use SQL only as their database language. So it is just like a standard. There are different versions of SQL, like MS SQL Server makes use of TSQL, that is the Transact SQL. On the other hand, Oracle uses PLSQL, while MS Access uses a version of SQL that is known as Jet SQL. What is Rdbms? So Rdbms is Relational Database Management System. It is just like an editor. It is just like a software. So software just like an editor where we can write our SQL queries, where we can see all the databases, we can organize all the databases, all the tables, identify relations between them and manage them. So it is just like a software, just like an IDE, which provides us with various functionalities. We can write queries, we can execute them, we can see the picture that how our database looks, we can create tables, we can perform all the operations in the tables, etc. There are different Rdbms available like Ssms, that is SQL Server Management Studio. What are the applications of SQL? So there are varied applications of SQL. As it is one of the most widely used query language, it is the language of database. So it is going to be used each and everywhere whenever we are talking about the relational databases. There are its varied applications, such as it allows the users to access the data in the relational database management system. So please mark one thing, that SQL can only be used if you are working with relational database management system, not with any other system. Like with unstructured data, SQL could not be used because it is specifically designed for the RDBMS. It allows the users to describe the data. So how can you describe the data? What is the content of that data? What information does that data contains, and what are the possible values? For example, if we are trying to store the name of a person in the database, then we know the name of the person can be of 2 syllables or 3 syllables, that is first name, last name, and first name, middle name and last name, or it could be a single thing only, that is only the first name. So this gives us some information about the database. Then we again get a picture that, okay, whenever we are trying to store the name, it must be of characters, like 1, 2, 3 cannot be the name of a person. So this is the kind of the information that we get about the data, and SQL allows us to describe that what kind of data is stored in a particular cell or in a particular column, etc. Then it allows the users to manipulate the data. That means if you have stored the data and if you want to change it in any way, then you can do that very easily using the SQL queries. So the SQL commands that we write to perform these certain operations over the database or the table, these are known as the SQL queries. It allows the users to embed within other languages using SQL modules, libraries, and precompilers. Basically, whenever we are talking about developing an application, whether it is a desktop application or an online application like a web application, then the database needs to be managed. So whenever we are talking about delivering or creating any such kind of applications, then it is important that along with a coding language, the database needs to be handled. And since SQL allows this possibility that it could be embedded within other languages, so very popular language in this case is SQL. Like you can just use Visual Basic to create your desktop application, and for the database you can use SQL. So this is another application of SQL. It allows user to create and drop the databases and the tables. Once you have created a database, first of all, you need to create a database for yourself, and inside the database, to store the information, you need to create a table. Now, once you have created them, suppose you want to delete a table or remove the whole database, then we have a command for that purpose known as the drop command. So with the help of SQL, we can either create the database, we can either delete the database, we can either update it, or get information from it, that is retrieval of information. Apart from this, the SQL also allows the users to set permissions on the different things such as tables. So whenever we are talking about data, it is a very sensitive thing. It is a very important concept. So whatever your database is, you always need to protect it. So special permissions could be granted to some people, And while some people are not granted permission, so they cannot view the database. So this permission part is also handled by SQL. In this video, we are going to see the popular RDBMSs that are available to us and try to compare the different types of RDBMS that are available to us, so that we are able to get a clear picture that which one suits the best to our needs. So let's start. There are these different types of RDBMS tools that are available. In this video, we are going to get a brief overview of each and every one of them. We are going to learn about what are its specialities, what are its features, and what is its history. So first of all, let us start with MySQL. So MySQL is an open source SQL database, and it was developed by a Swedish company called MySQL AB. It supports the different platforms such as Microsoft Windows, some of the major Linux distributions, Unix, and the Mac operating system as well. It has both the free and the paid versions depending upon the usage. So if you're trying to use it for the non-commercial purposes, you can just go with the free version. But for the commercial purposes, you need to purchase the Microsoft MySQL version. Okay. It is very fast, multi-threaded, and a multi-user SQL database server, which means more than one user can work on it at once, which is the fundamental need for the database administrators and the people working with the database. Because an organization, the database is huge and only one person cannot handle the whole database. So that is why multiple users needs to be logged in and working on the same database, and that is some kind of a feature provided by MySQL. If we talk about its history, so it was developed in the year 1994 by Michael Widnius and David Axmark. Its first internal release happened to be on 23rd of May 1995. So this is the whole history. I'm not going to just reiterate it, as you can just all see its history from here only. And the latest version, that is version 5.1, whose production release was on 27th November 2008. After being acquired by the Sun Microsystems, its parent company, MySQL AB, was acquired by Sun Microsystems, the same company that developed the Java language. Now, if we talk about the features of MySQL, it offers some interesting features such as high performance. Means the performance of the database server is very good. It provides high availability, scalability, and flexibility to run anything. So basically the different types of queries can be run on MySQL. Robust transactional support, so the transactional queries can be easily handled. Transactional queries are the ones that needs to be like working whenever we are working with account and the related data, then the transactional queries are handled. Like whenever we are talking about deducting the balance from one account and adding it to the another, so that's a transactional query. Web and data warehouse strengths, strong data protection. This is an important thing. The data needs to be protected, so strong data protection is provided by it. Comprehensive application development, ease of management, open source freedom and 24/7 support, and low total cost of ownership because it is available in free versions as well. The second option or the second tool that we have is Microsoft SQL Server. It is a relational database management system that is developed by Microsoft Inc. Its two primary query languages are the TSQL and Unsci-SQL. So what are these? We will learn about it later on because we would be covering Microsoft SQL Server only in this tutorial. This is its history. That is, it was released for Unix in the year 1987, and since then it has released its different versions all across the different years. If you want to read this history, you can just read it. If we talk about its features, so there are basically the same features as we had in MySQL. The only things that are different here is a CLR integration. That is, you can work Microsoft SQL servers, SQL queries with different languages. Then we have DDL triggers and exception handling, which means if there is any kind of an exception, then we can handle it. If there is some kind of an error or an anomaly that occurs while the transaction, we can handle it using Microsoft SQL Server. Apart from that, it also provides us XML integration facilities and the database mailing facilities, which is the foundation due to which Microsoft SQL Server is very much popular. The third database tool that we have is known as Oracle. It is a multi-user based database management system, which means multiple users can work on Oracle at once. It provides us different facilities as well. It was developed by the Oracle Corporation. It provides the facilities of efficient resource management, a database of information among the multiple clients that helps to request and send the data in the network. It is the database server choice whenever we are working with the client server architecture of computing. Client server architecture means one is a client who requests the resources and the server is the one who provides the resources. So whenever we are talking about this kind of an architecture, then this Oracle database server is the one that is most widely used. It supports all the major operating systems for the both clients and for the servers as well, which may include MS-DOS, NetWare, UNIXware, and mostly the Unix flavors. Okay. If we talk about its history, so Oracle was launched by Larry Ellison, Bob Miner, and Ed Oates in the year 1977, and up till now it has released several of its versions. In the year 2017, Oracle 11G was released. This was the new version that focused on better partitioning of the data and easy migration of the information from one place to another. So this is the whole history of Oracle, which you can read on your own. If we talk about its features, so there is different features provided to us by Oracle. The ones that attract the most attention is concurrency, read consistency, portability, data mining, bitmap indexes, parallel execution, partitioning, and materialized views. So these are actually the things that make Oracle stand out of the rest of the databases, because these are some of the features that are not provided by each and every one of the databases. For example, Analytic SQL, it helps us to analyze the different kinds of data that is being generated, or the different insights that it gives about the data is not provided by any other tool. That is why Oracle holds a special place in the database tools, in the Rdbms tools. The last but not the least, we have MS Access. MS Access or Microsoft Access is one of the most popular Microsoft products. It is an entry-level database management software. So if you are an absolute beginner, Microsoft recommends you to first try a hands-on experience on Microsoft Access and then move to Microsoft SQL Server. Because this is an entry-level software, it provides you with a GUI interface, but with the latest versions of MS SQL Server, we also get the GUI support, so we are able to work with it as well in the similar way as Microsoft Access. It is a part of MS Office package. It uses the JET database engine, which utilizes a specific SQL language dialect, which is known as JET SQL. The users can perform different kinds of information, like they can create tables, queries, which is nothing but the SQL commands, forms, reports, and connect them together with the macros. It is a file server based database, and it does not implement the basic concepts such as triggers, stored procedures, or transaction logging. That is why it is considered as an entry level of software. So these are the different Rdbms tools, and I have explained them all so that you can yourself compare that which one is best suited for your needs. In this SQL tutorial video, we are going to see that how can we download SQL into our PC. So for that purpose, you need to download two things. First of all, you need to download MS SQL Server into your PC, and then you need to download the SQL Server Management Studio for yourself. So these are the two things that you need to download, and both of them are available on the Microsoft's website. So for the first thing in which we are going to download this SQL Server, MS SQL Server for ourselves, you can just go to this link which is in SQL Server. You need to go to SQL Server downloads. Okay, so this page would be open for yourself, and then you can just go. There are these two specialized editions, the Developer Edition and the Express Edition. You can just choose for Developer Edition and click on Download Now. After this, a download will start. So after using this, you will get this kind of a setup, that is SQL 2019 Developer Edition, that is the installation guide for the developer. So let's see that how you need to install it. You need to click on yes. Now it asks me for an installation type. So these are the three types of installations given to me. There are these three options that I'm presented with. Like the basic installation, I can just go with the basic one. I can customize it as per my choice, or I can just go with download media, where I will download the SQL Server setup files and install them later as per my choice. So basically we are going with this basic type of installation because it is kind of automated and helps us to do each and everything quickly, and especially it is suited for the beginners who do not have that much of information about the custom installation. So basic is what I'm going to go with. Then I'm supposed to read all these license terms, but I trust Microsoft. So let's click on accept, and then it asks me for download location. So I can just click on browse and go with a download location, with a specific download location. But what is this location is the default location, and I'm happy with it. So once you're happy with your download location, you can just click on install. Right now I'm not going to click on install because this would start the installation process and all the files. As you can see, the download space, the download size is 1426 MB is going to start, and for this you need an active internet connection. I'm not going to click on install because it is already installed on my PC, so I'm not going to reinstall it. Okay, so after the installation is complete, you would be given an end screen where you would be given different options, and on from those options you just need to click on close. And because after that we need to just go and install the SQL Server Management Studio. So there is an option from where using SQL Server only we can just install the SQL Server Management Studio, but we are going to use a separate link for that purpose. So whenever there is an ending screen, you just need to click on close from there. And yeah, so after this Developer Edition, you need to just go to the second link, which is this one, from where you can just download the SQL Server Management Studio, or Ssms. So for this purpose, this is the URL that you need to follow. Then you can just scroll down, and here is this option of download SQL Server Management Studio Ssms. So this is what you need to download, and once you just click on this kind of a setup would be present on your computer. You can just open it up, click on yes, and here you can see that since SQL Server Management Studio is already installed on my machine, I am getting this option of repair, uninstall and close. So if you are a new user, that is if SQL Server Management Studio is not present on your computer screen or into your computer, then you would be getting an option of installing it. So you need to install it from here, right? Then I'm just going to close it. So after installing it, it requires a restart of your computer system. You need to restart it once, and then everything would be in place. So after installing, you will get something written as Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio into your PC. You can click on enter to open it up. So you need to search for Ssms on your search bar to make sure that this thing appears. And you see this is starting. This is only after you have installed the Ssms into your system. Okay, so now it's started, and one important thing to note is first of all, you need to search for a server name. By default, I'm getting the server name because I have already worked on Ssms. But if you're a new user, you have to search for the server name, and the server name here would not be present. So for that purpose, you can just click on this drop down, click on browse for more. Here you can see there is database engine. You can expand it, and there is the second one, that is 7BB. Whatever written over here is the name of your PC and a /SQL Express. So this is a local server which you want to use it in your SQL. Other are the network servers which are used for the network connection, but we are going to use a local server, which is this one, and you can just select on OK. Then if we talk about authentication, so there are two types of authentication available, either the Windows authentication or SQL Server authentication. By default, the Windows authentication is set, which means once you have logged in into your PC, you can easily use SQL Server for yourself. There is no need to just again provide a password whenever you are using SQL Server. So Windows authentication means the same password and the username that you provided to your PC while logging into it. And if there is no password, then that means that there is no protection, and anyone who can open your PC can access your SQL. Otherwise, SQL Server itself provides another level or another layer of security that is known as SQL Server Authentication. If we just click over it, if we just select SQL Server Authentication, we get a login and a password. So what is this login and password? This login and password is exclusively for SQL Server Management Studio, because we know that for any of the organization, a database is very important thing. It holds all the secrets of the organization, and no one wants its secrets to be leaked out into the outer world. That is why all the databases of the organizations needs to be well protected, and that is why SQL Server provides another layer of authentication known as SQL Server Authentication. So if you want, you can provide a login and a password for yourself for SQL Server Authentication. Otherwise, I'm just going to go with Windows authentication because I'm not that much concerned about the security. Plus, my computer is already logged with a password, so it's a very small chance that anyone can access my data. Then you can click on connect. Now after this, what you can see over here is on the left hand side is by default given the Object Explorer. This Object Explorer actually is for the database or the server that we have created, the local server that we have created. It contains a variety of objects. First is the database. So these are the databases that I have already created into my system. All these databases are present. So once you have created the databases, they all would be present over here. And in case you have not created any databases up till now, so nothing would be present over there. Then there are these some security rules, or the security folders credentials that are present. Then there are some server objects. Then there are some replications and management objects. Okay, so we are not concerned with it. All we are concerned with is the databases. Some of the databases are already present, and we would also be seeing that how can we just create a new database for ourselves. But all of this would be covered in the next video, in which we would be discussing all about the creation of the database, how the SQL queries work, how what happens actually when we write the SQL query and try to run it, how it runs, how it executes, and how it all works. In this video, after installing the MS SQL Server, first of all, we are going to understand the basic concepts of an Rdbms, so that we are familiar with the concepts. Then only we can just proceed with the information written, and we would be able to work with it. So first of all, what is RDBMS? RDBMS stands for Relational Database Management System. So it is a management system through which we can manage or manipulate or work with the relational databases. Now, what is a relational database? We know that in a database where the tables are connected with one another through some relations is known as a relational database, right? RDBMS is the basis of SQL, and for all the modern database systems like MS SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, and Microsoft Access. So we know these are the different RDBMS tools, as we have already covered them in one of our videos. And RDBMS is a database management system which is based on a relational model which was introduced by EF Cod. So if we talk about the father of a relational database, so EF Cod is given that thing. Let us just talk about the basic concepts of an RDBMS. So the basic concepts of RDBMS, the first thing is a table. When we create a database, then there are these different tables present in this database, and a collection of tables is known as a database when we are talking about RDBMS. So table is just like the fundamental quantity of a database. The database or the data in an RDBMS is stored in the database objects, which is known as table. So table is nothing but a database object, and table itself contains the rows and the columns. The horizontal fields are known as rows and the vertical fields are known as columns, and in these rows and columns the data is stored. The table basically contains a set of related entries, like the entries are related to some particular thing. If we are talking about student, so if we create a student table, we want some entries like student name, student ID, student age, student class, etc. All these would be stored in a table. There would be different columns by the name of ID, name, age, etc. for the student, and all the information like of a particular student would be stored in rows. So this is the structure of a table, and that's how information is organized in a table. Next database object that we have is known as a field. Every table is broken up into smaller entities which are known as fields. Okay. Like in the case of the student table, we have ID, name, age, etc. or student class. These are known as fields. Field is basically a column in a table that is designed so that it can maintain some kind of an information about each and every record in a table. If we are talking about ID, so that is a field because it stores the student's ID, which we know is a numerical data through which we can identify each and every student uniquely. So yeah, ID is a field. Then there are some more database concepts like row. So row can also be referred to as a record. A record or a row is the individual entry. If we are talking about a specific student, say ABC, so ABC has a unique ID, its name is ABC, it has a unique age, it has a unique class. So this whole set of unique values corresponding to ABC constitute a single row, which is represented by a horizontal record or a horizontal row. Okay, and there could be the multiple rows in a single table. There could be a number of rows in a single table. Okay. The fourth concept is a column, that is a vertical entity in a table and contains all the information associated with a specific field in a table. So field can also be considered as a column that tells us that okay, this kind of information needs to be stored in the table. Now let us talk about SQL constraints. So the constraints are nothing but the rules that are applied on the data. Like when we are talking about ID, so we want the ID to only be a numerical value, a character value or a special symbol cannot be a part of an ID. So this is a rule, this is a constraint that ID always needs to be a numerical value, right? Now, always being a numerical value is a constraint on ID. No ID can be null, which means ID for any student cannot be like absent. So it needs to be present. That is why another constraint is applied on the ID, that it cannot be null. It cannot be an empty value. So the constraints can be provided on a column level or a table level. That means a particular column can be bound against a constraint, or a particular table could also be bound on a constraint. Like if a table needs to be provided with some kind of data, then the constraint is on a table level. But if the particular column needs to be bound on a particular data, then the constraint is said to be on a column level. So there are these different types of constraints that are available in SQL. Now the first constraint is a not null constraint, which means that if this not null constraint is applied on any of the data, it ensures that a column cannot have a null value. This is a column level constraint which ensures that a column can never have a null value if this not null constraint is applied on that particular column. The second constraint we have is a default constraint. So like for a column which cannot hold null values, if you have not provided any of the value for that particular column, then automatically a default value would be assigned to that particular column. So this is the constraint known as the default constraint. Third constraint is known as a unique constraint, which means all the values in the column must be different from one another. All the values needs to be unique. There cannot be a repetition of the values. Like if we are talking about IDs, two students cannot have the same ID. If one student has an ID, say 123, then no other student can have the ID as 123. So this is a unique constraint that needs to be applied over the column. So this constraint is known as the unique constraint. Next we have primary key. So basically keys in SQL play a very important part. They specify that what kind of data could be stored in a column. And when we are talking about primary key, so primary key is basically a set of constraints. The three constraints that we have read up till now, it uses these constraints to these two constraints to make sure that the values that it holds must be not null, that it cannot hold any of the null values, and whatever values are present in the primary key must be unique. So with the combination of these, the primary key is created, and using this primary key we could refer to each and every table. Then we have another key known as the foreign key that uniquely identifies the row or record in another database table. So whenever we are trying to just establish a relationship between two tables, then it needs to be established on the basis of the foreign key. Like if we have one table, student table, so ID is its primary key. That is, it cannot hold the null values and it must hold the unique values. And this student ID is supposed present in any other table. So in the second table, this student ID will work as a foreign key, and on the basis of this student ID, the connection could be established between the two tables. So the primary key and the foreign keys are the fundamental concepts of a relational database management system. Next we have something called as index, which is used to create and retrieve the data from the database very quickly. Basically, whenever we are talking about index, we are just setting this index value to a particular thing or to a particular value, and whenever we enter any of the records, then this value is automatically used, and that's how we get our table. In this video, we are going to see the basics SQL queries. Basically, we are going to see that how can we create a database Firstly, using the GUI methods that are provided to us by Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, that is our Ssms. Then we are going to see that how using the SQL queries also we can create a database. And once we have created the database, we will see all the operations that are possible upon that particular database. Okay. Also, we will understand that how actually the SQL queries work. We just write the queries and execute them. So what is the process behind the execution of the SQL queries that takes place is what we are going to see in this video as well. So these are some of the basic concepts that we would be seeing in today's video. So let us start with the video. First of all, when you have opened Ssms, you need to connect to your database. So whenever you open your Ssms, this kind of a window would be opened in front of you, where everything would be given just like this, and you just need to go with connect button so that your database is connected, your local server is connected, and all of the databases, if you have created anything in the past, would be available over here. In order to add a new database, first of all, we are going to see that how can we add a new database with a simple click of the buttons. So to add a new database, what you need to do is first of all go into your Object Explorer. Then there is this database written. You can just right click, and here you can see a bunch of options are available. So to add a new database or create a new database, you need to go to this first option, new database option. Then this kind of a thing would be open in front of you. You do not need to worry about all the details that are given over here. All you need to do is just provide a name for your database. So let us just provide it as Zeedup sample. Okay, Zeedup sample. That's my simple database name, and then you can click on add, or you can just click on OK. So what happens is, since I clicked on add, so this kind of a database file was created. By default, we have only two files. One is the rows and the other is a log file. The rows is actually consisting of actually the tables or wherever the data is stored, that is in the table. So all the tables will be present in this rows file, and in this log file, all the transactions that would be carried out on that particular database would be stored. That is what all you did into that database. So a log file is very important whenever we are working with database, so that we are able to see that who has done what changes on that particular database and what effect did that changes had on our database. Okay, so the third thing, that rows we had added was not necessary, so let's just click on remove. So this rows thing is now removed, and we have only two files. These two files are associated with our database every time we create a new database. Now you can just click on OK, and you see in our database option we have got these bunch of databases, and then there is a Zeedup sample database as well. If we just expand it, so you can see we have got a bunch of other options related to this particular database. These options are like database diagrams, tables, views, synonyms, programmability, etc. So basically, if you want to add a table to a database, you can just expand it and see that there are no tables present right now. But if you just get any other database like this ABC database, you just expand it tables. So one of the tables is present over here. So if your database contains any of the tables, it would be present. But since we just created the Zeedup sample database, so the tables are not present because we have not created any tables. So in order to create tables, the thing is similar. You just need to right click, go to table option, and then here you would be able to create a table for yourself. So what information do you need to provide for creation of a table? The name of the column. That is what is going to be the column name, and by this way you can add multiple columns for your tables. Then you need to provide a data type. So we would be learning more about the SQL data types in the next video or the upcoming videos. And then the third information you need to provide is allow nulls. If you just remember, we have learned about this allow null constraint in SQL. So null constraint makes sure that whether you want empty values in your particular column or not. So if you want the values, you can just check on this box, which means yeah, it should allow the null values. If you keep this as unchecked, which means that you do not want the null values to be stored in this particular column of the database, so no null values would be stored over there. And after this, you see that there is this bunch of information also available. This all helps us to just associate our different methods or different constraints with our column names or the tables. So basically right now we are not going to work with the tables. We are just going to see all about the database in this video, and then in the upcoming videos we will cover the tables once we have learned all about the data types in SQL. So if you see, these are the column properties. All right, so if you want, you can just close it and select no, because we do not want to save this table in our Zeedup sample database. Now this was about how to create database using the clicks, the button clicks. However, if you want to add an SQL query, so how can you do that? You can easily just go to this button, that is this new query button, or use the shortcut Control N for this purpose. If I just click on new query, you can see that this kind of a text editor has been opened in front of me, and by default whatever database you want to do, your databases, see these are the different databases available, and you can select any of the databases. Okay, so right now Zeedup sample database is selected. If you want, you can just toggle to any other database like MSDB or any other work database, whatever the database is there. So there is a list of the available databases. Suppose I want to create a new database using SQL query, so I can simply write create. This is a keyword, that is, yeah, I want to give an information to SQL that I want to create something. What do I want to create? I want to provide its type. So I want to create a database, and then I need to provide the name of the database. So let us just provide again Zeedup sample and see what happens. Zeedup sample is the name, and I click on enter. Nothing happens because the query is not executed yet. To execute the query, you need to use this execute button, or can use the shortcut F5. So I'm just going to use execute, and see I have got an error. Database Zeedup sample already exists, so you cannot create the database with the same name that is already present. You have to choose a different name for your database. So let us just create a simple Zeedup. And then if we just try to execute it, you see commands completed successfully, which means now a database by the name of Zeedup has been created for us. So if you just go over here, you can see that no, Zeedup is not present. So you must be wondering where it is. So actually whenever you use queries, the queries work on the backend. That means they do not at an instant refresh the object explorer, they do not update the object explorer. In order to do that, you need to manually refresh it. So you can just use this button, that is this kind of a refresh button, and still you can see that the Zeedup database is not present. So what you can do is you can just use this plug with a cross sign to disconnect your local server, then again connect your local server. You can just click on connect. And now if you just open your databases, you can see the Zeedup database is already present. So this is how you should work whenever you have made any of the changes into your database. So this is how you can just create a database with a simple SQL query, create database and the name of the database. So this is a simple query, you just provided it and executed it. That's what you saw. But actually, there are a bunch of steps that are followed in the backend. That is how this query is executed and how SQL actually knows exactly what to do. So for this purpose, we have something for you. That is how the SQL works. So the SQL works like this. This is the whole working architecture of SQL. First of all, the SQL query that we provide goes into the query language processor, which is just like a translator that translates the SQL query that we have written for the database management system engine. Then this Rdbms engine, which is comprised of the file manager and the transaction manager. So basically they do the actual things and a physical database is created. So this is the whole process that is associated with the working of the SQL. So the best way is determined by the system to carry out the request that we have given. and then the SQL engine or this database management system figures out that how they should carry out this task. In this video, we will see that what are the different data types that are available to us in SQL. But before that, let us first understand that what is a data type. So if we take an example of a student table, so in the student table, we have different things stored, such as the ID of the student, its name, age, and the class in which he is enrolled. So these are the different types of information stored. Now, when we are working on this information, we know that when we are talking about ID, so a general conception is that it should be a collection of numbers. Name is going to be composed of the different alphabets. The age is going to be again of numbers, and the class is going to be of numbers or letters. Like if we are talking about the school up till 12th, so it would be like 1, 2, 3 to just depict the class. And if we are talking about the undergraduate or the postgraduate courses, then it is going to be like BTech, BCA, etc. Right? So these are the different fields and they contain the different types of data. So a data type is a broad term. It is going to be associated with that particular data, and it specifies that what kind of data is present in that particular column. We have already seen that how can we create the tables. We just saw a sample, but we didn't create any table in a previous video, where we saw that each column needs to be provided with a specific data type. So these are what are known as data types, and there are these different data types present in SQL that helps us to organize and store different types of data. So the first category is numerical data. If we want to store the numbers, then there are these different data types available to us that would help us to store the numbers. There are like 9 data types available which help us to store the numbers. Okay, now this from and to are its ranges, which means any number that is lying between these ranges is a valid value for that particular data type. Like if you want to store a very huge number, you can use a big int data type, but if you want to store smaller number, you can use int. If you want to store even smaller number, you can use small int. And if you want to store a very small up to 255, from 0 to 255, if the number is between them, then you can use a tiny int. So these are the different data types that although hold the numerical data, but their ranges are different because their work is different. Similarly, if you want to store something as 0 or 1, that whether it is true or false, you can simply go with a bit. Decimals helps you to store decimal data. Then there is this numeric data type as well, which has got a particular range, the same as that of decimal. Then we have got money, which is used to store the monetary transactions, which means its range is big. Apart from that, it also accepts the decimal values as well, as you can see in the range. Then there is this small money, which is also used to store money, but in a smaller fashion. Then we have date and time data, because date and time is a very common thing to be stored in a database. That is why we have simple date and time. So for this, we have 4 data types. The first is known as date time data type, which has a specific range. That is, you can store any date that is starting from 1st of January 1753 to 31st of December 9999. So that's quite a huge range, and SQL Server expects that whatever date you want to store would be within these 2 ranges. So if you think that it is between these 2 ranges, you can go with date time data. But if you think that your date is even nearer than them, like you do not want this huge data, you can just go with another data type, that is the small date time, which is ranging from 1st January 1900 to 6th June 2079. Why we have different data types and why should we use the different data types? Because the larger the data type is, the more memory it takes. Whenever we are working with data, then although the data is very huge, it occupies a lot of space in the memory. So the work of a person who designs a database must be to ensure that whatever data type he selects is doing the work with the minimum occupancy of the memory. That is what an efficient database looks like. So that is why we have got these different types of data types for the same data as well. Similarly, if you just want to store the date, then there is this date data, and if you just want to store the time, then there is this time data, which will help you to do the task. Next, we have character data types. Like if you want to store the name of the student, or the name of the employee, or name of any other thing, or any other person, or any character, we have these different character data types. First is char, which can hold 8,000 characters, which is the maximum length of 8,000 characters. Then we have varchar, which can hold a maximum of again 8,000 characters. Then we have varchar max, which can store a lot of more characters than this char and nvarchar. Then there is this text data, which is of variable length, non-Unicode data with a maximum length of this bunch. So what is this non-Unicode? This non-Unicode means that the characters are not stored in their Unicode fashion, they are stored as they are written. Okay. And fixed length means that if you have specified a particular length for that particular character, so that much of space would be occupied, despite the fact that it may take lesser than that space. Like for example, if you are taking name, so a general conception is for name there must be at least 50 characters reserved. So suppose a name is very small, it occupies only like 17 or 18 characters, then the rest of the space would be wasted if we are working with the fixed length. So in that case, we have to work with the variable length of data types like varchar and varchar max. Then there are other character types known as the Unicode character data types, which are prefixed with an n, the same as characters, but they are just prefixed with n. So they help us to provide the characters being stored in the database in a Unicode fashion, and apart from that, it occupies less memory. Like it can store a maximum length of 4,000 characters, a maximum length of 4,000 characters for char and nvarchar. So nchar is a fixed length again, and nvarchar is again a variable length. So whenever we are making a database, it is advisable to use nvarchar or varchar instead of character data type. Then we have some of the miscellaneous data types in SQL. So these data types have different purposes. They are used for different methods, like not the traditional methods, like for storing numerical data, for storing like textual data. They are used for special types. Let us take a look at them. We have 6 miscellaneous data types. The first one is SQL variant. It stores the values of the various SQL Server supported data types except text, n-text, and timestamp. So there are some of the data types that are associated with SQL Server. Whatever those data types are, they could be stored in a data type called SQL_variant. So whatever the variants are of the SQL Server exclusive to SQL Server, they needs to be stored here. Then we have timestamp that stores a database wide unique number that gets updated every time a row gets updated. So we know that in the database creation we have log files. So in the log files, this timestamp plays a very important role because it would be updated with the recent transaction or the recent operation that has been done by anyone. The timestamp of the log file would be updated automatically as soon as any transaction takes place on that particular database. So that's what timestamp is used for. Then we have unique identifier that stores a globally unique identifier, that is GUID. Then we have another miscellaneous data type known as XML that is used to store the XML data, such as XML instances in a column or a variable. So when we were talking about the features of Microsoft SQL Server, then we saw that it helps us to work with XML data as well. So for this purpose, we have this data type called XML that is used to store the XML data. Then we have cursor, that is a reference to a cursor object. We can create an object for a cursor and store it in the data type known as cursor. And the last but not the least, the last miscellaneous data type is table that is used to store a result for later processing. Suppose we have got some kind of we perform some kind of a transaction using a query, and we get a table. We do not want to process it right now, but we want to process it later. So the whole table could be stored using this table data type. In this video, we are going to see that first of all, how can we create a table in SQL Server Management Studio, that is Ssms, which we have already installed. Then we are going to see that how can we change the structure of the table once we have created it. So there are two ways to create an SQL table. As we have already seen in the database case, that we can either create a database using query or using the GUI method. So the table also can either be created using query or using the GUI methods. So first of all, I'm going to show you that how can you create a table using the GUI methods. Okay, so for this purpose, what you need to do first of all is you need to have a database for yourself, because the tables could only be connected or can be created inside a database, right? Then once you are inside your database, you need to just connect your SQL server. Once it is connected, you can just go to the object explorer that is present on the left hand side. You can expand the database in which you want to create a new table. There is this tables folder. You can just right click on it and click on this table option. So I'm going to create a simple student table in which I'm going to provide its ID, name and age. These are the three things. Okay. So first of all, we need to give the name of the column. So the first column name is going to be ID. Then I'm going to provide a data type. Since we have already read about all these different data types that are available to us, so I'm going with tiny int, because the tiny int's range was from 0 to 255. So I'm happy with it. So I'm going with tiny int, and I can just uncheck this allow nulls. So what would happen is no null value would be added into this ID column. Then I can just right click and I can set it as a primary key from here. Now what is a primary key? We already know that primary key is just like a constraint that helps us to make sure that any column, if set as a primary key, cannot hold the duplicate values and it cannot hold the null values. So the primary key is used to just associate a table. It is used to identify a table. So that is why I'm setting ID as a primary key. And another thing I want is this is this column properties. If I could just scroll down, so you can see there is something written as identity specification. So what is this identity purposes actually? Identity is something like if we set the identity specification to yes, we can just double click on it and it would be set to yes, or we can simply type it as yes. Or we can just expand this identity specification, and in this is this option of is identity, and we can set to yes. So what happens is a default value of identity is set, which means that we do not need to give a value of identity, and SQL would automatically get the value of identity. Like if the ID is there, so we do not give the ID value to SQL whenever we are inserting data inside this table, and SQL Server will automatically get this value. So there are these different things present like identity increment and identity seed. So identity seed is the initial value. That is what is the initial value of your identity column. So initial value is 1, which means it would start from 1. And how will it increment? It would increment with 1, which means the first column or the first row that we enter will have the value 1, then it would be incremented by 1 automatically, and the second row we enter will have the ID value of 2 and 3 and 4 and so on as we enter the rows. So this is the usage of this identity, and we can just select any column with its identity specification to be yes, like this. Okay, so this was about the first column. Let us add a new column, that is the name of the student. So I'm just going to go with let us just turn off this caps lock and stu name. So stu name is what I'm going to go with, and the data type I can specify is nvarchar 50. So 50 you can see is the default value, and I can just go on not allowing the nulls. Why I've taken nvarchar to make sure that it helps in efficient memory usage. Then the next thing I got is student age. So let's just rename it to stu age, and it's again going to be tiny int because the age of the student cannot be like more than 255 years. And the ID I can just change it to like stu ID. Okay, so this is all that I have done. That's how I can just simply create a table. And how you can just create a table, this is the specification of the table. That is, you need to store one ID, one name, and one age into the table. How can you just store this table? You can just click on cross sign. So you would be asked that whether you want to save the changes. You can click on yes, and then you are prompted to enter the name of the table. So this is the name by which your table would be associated or would be known. So let's just rename it as student table or student table. Simple. And then you can click on OK. Now what happens? It was created in Zeedup sample database. If we go to the Zeedup sample database, you can see in the tables thing, this student table is present, dbo.student table. If we just double click over it, or we can just go to table, we can just right click and go to design. So what would be able to see is what was the design that was used inside this table. If you want to change it later on, we can simply change it over here. So suppose you want to just add any other column, you can simply add it. Like I want to add like stu code, that is the a specific code for that particular student, and it is again going to be integer this time, because this code can be a large value and I'm not going to allow the nulls. Then do you want to save the changes? Yes, I want to save those changes, and then those changes would be saved. Some changes like like you can see here, the changes have been saved. You may get error, but actually the changes are being saved, so it doesn't matter, because ultimately you want the changes to be saved, so they are saved, right? Now let us just see. This is how you can change the table. Okay, if you want to add any new column like we did right now, so you may want to just delete the table and then add a new column, because it may give you an error when you're trying to add a column like this. So for this purpose, you need to first remove that column, like remove this whole table and then add a new column. So this is kind of an overhead. So that's why it's recommended that you must know the structure of your table beforehand, otherwise your work increases. Then you can just right click on delete column to save the changes. Yes. So now we didn't get any error because our table is now saved. We can again go to this design and see that all the changes have been saved, and if there are any unsaved changes, you will see an asterisk over here. So we are not seeing asterisk, that means all the changes have been saved, right? Now let us see that how can we work with a database. So we know that if we want to toggle any database, we can simply go to this drop down and select that particular database, like Zeedup or Zeedup sample, whatever you want. But if you want to make sure that you do this with queries, so suppose right now we are in the Zeedup database and I want to use the Zeedup sample database, so I can simply use this use Zeedup sample and then execute it using F5. So you will get a message, command completed successfully, and see that this database has been changed to Zeedup sample. So this is how you can enter into a particular database, and that's pretty simple, right? So now if you are wondering that how can you actually create a table using the SQL statement, so here is the syntax. You need to use this create word, and with this create you need to specify that what you want to create. I want to create a table. Then you can give the name of the table, that is what is the name of the table which you want to create. So let's just create a table called employee table, right? And then we need to specify these parentheses and a semicolon like this. Okay, and inside these parentheses we can specify all the columns. Like first of all is going to be employee ID of type tiny int, then put a comma, then the second column which is going to be the employee name, which is going to be n varchar of 50, right? then again put a comma, and then it is going to be the city of the employee. So city, again in varchar, this time I'm going to go with like 20 only. Okay, and then you can just select them and click on execute. So actually we can just go with varchar, like this, and then just try to execute it. So yeah, it's completed successfully. You can just disconnect it, connect it again to see that whether this table is present in our Zeedup sample or not. So yeah, this employee table is present, and that's all for this video. In this video, we are going to see that how can we change the structure of a table, and apart from that we are going to see that how can we delete a table once we have created it. So if we just go to our Zeedup sample database, we have two tables with us, that is the student table and the employee table. If we just go to this employee table's design by right clicking it, we can see that we have these three columns and these three data types. So suppose right now you can see that all three of them have been allowed with null values. So suppose if we do not want the null values to be associated with them, we can just uncheck them from here, and then we can just save them by using Ctrl S. So yeah, it gives us an error. That means these changes are not permitted. Okay, so we can click on cancel. Then what we can do is we can just drop this table and then recreate it so that we can just work with these changes. So how can we drop the table, or how can we delete this table? So we have a command called drop, and just as the create command, we have to specify that what kind of object we want to drop. Like if we want to drop a database, we can specify database. If we want to drop or delete a table, we can specify a table. In this case, we want to delete a table, so let's specify table and provide its name as employee table. Now, one interesting thing to note over here is that you must be sure that you are actually in the current database. Your current database is the same database where you want to delete your table. Otherwise, if your tables are having the same name, like you are having employee table in Zeedup sample and employee table in any other database also, and you're not sure about that particular database, then you may accidentally delete some other table. So it is always advisable to make sure that you are in the correct database. Then if you want to just execute only one query, you can just select that particular query and click on this execute button. So yeah, command completed successfully. We can just disconnect it and connect it again, our local server, to see that whether the changes have been applied into our Zeedup sample database or not. So yeah, the changes have been applied and our table, employee table, has been removed from the database. Now let us just create it again, but with a constraint called not null. So we can just specify the constraint not null, which means that these commands or these columns would not be allowed with a null value. So not null is what we have specified. Then we can just select them and click on execute. So commands completed successfully. Again, you need to disconnect it and connect it. And then if we just go to our Zeedup sample database, here is our table. We can just open its design once again. And you can see that now the nulls have been removed, right? Okay. So yeah, it's done. Now what happens is, suppose you want to just change the structure of the table. So what kind of a structure you can change? If we just open our student table, okay, this is our student table. Its data type was tiny int. If we just want to change it to something, say like int, then this kind of a change is something that is acceptable. You can press Ctrl S. Okay, so this is also not acceptable. If we just change the column name, like from student ID to simple ID, and change it back to like tiny int, let's see what happens. So yeah, you can change the name of the columns, but any of the fundamental changes, like the change in the data type, changing in the null values, or changing in the columns structure, like adding columns or deleting columns, you need to drop your table first, then create the table from scratch once again, right? So if you want to just change the name of your table, it's possible. Then there is another thing that is known as truncate table. So what does this truncate table do? This truncate table helps us to change the it does not delete the table data, but only it deletes the it does not delete the whole table, but only the data of the table. Like if I just go to any other database, so I have something. Okay, so yeah, I have this Travalia DB in which there is this table called order table in which I have some data. Okay, so let's just work upon it. So this is our query. We want to use the Travalia database right now. So let's just use it. Use Travalia DB. Now you must be very sure about your spellings this time, because otherwise it would give us an error. Like we can see we are now in Travalia DB. If we just use this command, that is truncate, then you need to specify what type of object. So it is a table type of object and the name of the table, which was order table. So order table is what we want to truncate, which means we want to just remove its data and not the whole table. So we can just select this and click on execute. So commands completed successfully. If we just close it and open it once again. So if you have created a table for yourself and you want to show it, you can just right click and go to edit top 200 rows. So you can see right now we have nothing into our table. There is no data in our table, which means all the data has been removed because we used the truncate table command, right? But instead, if we use the drop table, this whole table would have been removed. So that's the difference between the drop table and the truncate table. Again, we can just come back to our original database, which is the Zeedup sample. So we have already written this use statement. I'm just going to execute it again, which means we are again in our Zeedup sample database, right? Now let us just use the feature of alter table through the queries. I'm going to show you that how can you just use the alter table command. Okay, so what we can do is, suppose I want to change the column. I want to change something about a column. So I can write the command as this: alter. What do you want to alter? I want to alter the table. Which table you want to alter? I want to alter, let's just see what tables we have. We have a student table and an employee table. So let's just see its design. So yeah, I want to alter this employee table. Then in the employee table, I want to alter a column. So alter what object? A column object is what I want to alter. So the column name we want to give is, which column you want to alter? I want to alter emp id. Okay. Now, if I just want to change its data type to integer, let's see, is it possible? So let's just put a space and then write int and a semicolon. Let's just execute it. Commands completed successfully. If we just go to the employee table, okay, we need to refresh it. So we can just close it again, open it. So yeah, its type has been changed to integer. So if you are trying to change or alter your table through the queries, then you are able to change its data type. But if you're trying to do through graphical user interface or GUI, then you are not able to change its database, okay, or the data type. So this is how it works. This is the usage of alter table command, through which you can alter the structure of your table. Now, we have already learned about this constraint in SQL, that is the not null constraint. And if you want to just alter it, we can just simply write here not null like this and execute our query. Sorry, I accidentally clicked on new query, so you can just click on execute query and you can just close this table and open it again. through the design and see that not null is now applied. So all the changes are, a bunch of more changes are possible through this queries that are not possible through GUI. So whenever you're trying to change the structure of the table or use the alter statements, then I recommend you to use the queries, because in a GUI, whenever you are working with GUI, you are not getting that much of freedom. So apart from that, we also want to set, suppose, the employee ID as a primary key. So the question is, how can you do that? This is all possible through the different constraints, which we will see in the next video when we are talking about how all those constraints could be applied through queries. So that's all for this video, in which we learned about different things. We learned about a variety of statements, like the drop table. How can we delete a particular table? How can we just truncate a table, that is not delete the whole table but only the data from that table? Then we learned how can we alter the table using the SQL queries. So this is the different operations that could be performed on the table. And one more thing, you can also drop a database if you like. So let's just try that as well. So use the drop statement and provide that, yeah, I want to drop my database. So the Zeedup database that I just created was empty. So let's just click on execute. So command completed successfully. If you just disconnect it and connect it again, you will see that the Zeedup database is gone from you. In this video, we are going to discuss about the different operators available in SQL. So first of all, the question is, what is an operator? So an operator is actually represented by a symbol that is used to take a particular action or perform a particular operation. It requires at least two things on which it could perform an operation, and those two things are known as operands. So here we have different types of operators in SQL. First class, or the first type, is the arithmetic operators. We have the 5 basic types of arithmetic operators in SQL. The first one is the addition, which is used to add the two values. Like if we add two values with the help of this plus operator, it would just add them and would give the answer. Here we have taken A to be 10 and B to be 20. And similarly, there is another arithmetic operator known as subtraction, which will subtract the right hand operand from the left hand operand, and A minus B will give the answer as minus 10. Multiplication multiplies the values. The division operator divides the left hand operand by the right hand operand, and the modulus gives the remainder of whatever the division was performed. Like if we are using the division operator, then we would be getting the quotient, but if we want the remainder, then we need to go with the modulus operator. So these are the 5 arithmetic operators in SQL. The second types of operators we have are known as the comparison operators. These operators actually work upon two operands and are used to provide that whether they are used to basically compare two operands and return the result in the form of a condition, or they evaluate a condition and return the result in form of true or false, that is a Boolean value. So first is an equal operator that is used to check that whether the two operands are equal or not. Then this is this like exclamation and equal, which is called a not equal operator. So it requires a condition that when the operands are not equal, then it returns true. This is the operand which is again used to check that if the operands are equals or not. It is also like inequality operator, which is used to return true if the two operands are not equal to one another. This is the operator which is used to compare the two values, and it checks if the value of the left hand operand is greater than the value of right hand. If it is, then it returns true. The complete opposite of it is this less than operator, which is used to check that whether the value of the right hand operand is greater than that of the left hand. If yes, then it returns true. this greater than equals to operator is used to check whether the value of the left hand operator is greater than or if it is equal to the right hand operator. Then it returns true. Similarly, we have this less than equal to operator, which is used to check that whether the value of the right hand operand is greater than or equal to then that of the left hand. Then it returns true. And this is the negation of the less than sign, which means that if we use this, we get the same result as the greater than sign, like this one over here. And this is the negation of the greater than sign, which means on applying this, we would get the same result as this operator. So these are the different comparison operators we have in SQL. The next class, we have the logical operators, or the next type of operators present in SQL are known as logical operators. If we talk about logical operators, the first operator that we have is known as the all operator, which is used to compare the all values, a value in all the values to another value set. So basically, whenever we want to compare the values, then we use this all operator. The second operator, the second logical operator, we have the AND operator. It is used with the multiple conditions. In SQL queries or SQL statements, we have a clause known as a where clause, which is used to apply the condition over our query. So we will learn about it in the later video lessons. But whenever we are trying to apply some condition, then we can use the AND operator, and if both the conditions are true, then only we would get the result. Similarly, we have another operator known as any operator, which is used to compare any applicable value. We can give a list of values, and if any of the values is present in the condition, then it gives us a true value or the output. Next, we have a between operator. This between operator is used to search the values, that whether they are within a set of values or not. So whether whenever you want to just provide a range, suppose you want to extract employee data whose salary are between rupees 30,000 to rupees 50,000. So this is where this between operator would be used. Exists is another operator which is used to search that whether a condition or a particular thing or a particular value is present in the table or not. If it is present, then the condition is met and we get to see the result. If it is not, then we are not able to see the result. Similarly, we have another operator that is known as the in operator. So whenever we are providing a condition, suppose we want to provide that whether the students are from like specific cities or specific countries. We want to select the students if they are from like India, USA and Germany. We want to select these three countries. Okay, so we can just give that in the where clause, that if the students where country in, and we can specify these three countries. So all the students that are a part of this these three countries would be selected. Their corresponding records would be selected. So this is where the in operator is used. The next set of logical operators we have, the first one is known as the like operator. So like operator is used with the wildcard operators. Now what are these wildcard operators? These wildcard operators help us in SQL to define a particular pattern. And on the basis of that particular pattern, we can extract the data from the tables or the values from the tables into our SQL. Now this is where the like operator used, that is whenever we want to perform this kind of an operation, wherever we want to just apply the patterns over the data, then we can just use the like operator. How are these patterns used? What are these wildcard characters? We will learn it all in the upcoming video lessons. Then we have the not operator. Now not operator, as the name suggests, it is a logical operator that is used to negate the condition. So an interesting feature for the not character is that it never comes singularly. It always comes in pair with at least one other operand. And this operator must be of any type. It would be of any type, like not exists, not between, not in, etc. It is a negate operator which is used to just reverse whatever thing the mentioned operator does. It always comes before that particular operator and it always negates the condition whatever that operator does. Then we have the OR operator. OR operator, just like the AND operator, is used to combine multiple conditions in the where clause. But the difference between the AND and the OR operator is the AND operator is used to just give us the true value if both the conditions that we have provided are true, or if all the conditions that we have provided are true. But if we want to just check that we want the result if either one of the conditions are true, then we can use the OR operator, because it would give us the result as true if either of the conditions are true. It doesn't necessarily requires both of them to be true. If either of them are true, we would get the result in the OR operator. The next operator, logical operator, we have is known as the is null operator. It is used to check that whether a value is null value or not. If it is null, then it returns true, otherwise it returns false. The last logical operator we have is known as the unique operator. This unique operator searches for this searches in the table that whether all the values that are mentioned are unique or not. If they are, then this condition is met for the unique operator, otherwise the condition is not met. So it is used to check that no duplicates are present. So this is the different types of operators we have in SQL, and using these operators we can perform multiple operations or multiple things over the SQL queries. In the previous few videos, we have seen all the basics about SQL, all the concepts about SQL, and from this video onwards, we are going to focus mostly on the queries. There are just a few concepts that needs to be explained, which I will explain while taking up the queries only. Okay, so from this video onwards, we would mainly be focusing on how can we write the queries and how can we work with the queries in Ssms. Now we have already introduced ourselves with the concept of queries and how can we just write those queries in Ssms. But there are a lot of things that needs to be understood for writing the queries in SQL. So let's start. First of all, we know that this is the database engine which we need to connect. Now once it is connected, if you remember that in the previous videos we have already written some of the queries, and whenever you want to just bring those queries back, what you can do is just go to this file, open, and you can open a file. Now here you can see that we have got this thing SQL Query 1. So whatever thing you have written, it is always present. Whatever query you have written, it is always available for saving purposes. You can save it and reopen it, because SQL treats the queries just like a text file. It is a text editor that you are seeing right now, where you can just write the queries. So you can just use it like a text editor. You can just copy all this stuff by right clicking and copying it, and you can just open your notepad and paste it over here. So similarly, the vice versa is also possible. I'm not saving it right now. That if you have written something in notepad, some of the queries, if it is a valid SQL statement, you can just copy it from there and paste it over here and execute it. That is because this is just like a text editor, just like in any IDE. This is an advantage of Ssms. Okay, so first of all, what we are going to do is just change our database to this Zeedup sample database. So we are just going to select this part and click on execute. Why we did that? Because we didn't wanted any of these other statements to be executed. We only wanted this statement to be executed, right? Then we can just come on a new line. If we just open the databases and the Zeedup sample databases, we can see that there are two tables. One is the student table and the other is the employee table. So how can you just see a table? We know that using the GUI methods, we can just right click over this table and we can go to select top 200 rows or select top 100 rows, whatever it is, and we would be able to see, actually edit top 200 rows, and we would be able to see the table in this kind of fashion. But this is through the GUI. How can you do that through queries? So in the queries, we have a statement in SQL which is known as the select statement. This select statement helps us to select a particular thing or a particular column provided its table name. What is its syntax? You can simply write select. This is a keyword, that's why it's turned to blue. Then you need to specify the names of the columns which you want to select. So we have the columns like ID, then put a comma. The second column, that was stu name, put a comma, and then the third column which was stu age. Okay. Then after the select statement, you need to specify the columns which you want to select. Then you can just come to the next line, and using this from statement, now you need to specify the name of the table, that from which table you want to select these three columns. So I want to select them from the student table. Right, I want to select these three columns from the student table. Let's just select this whole and click on execute. So you can see we have got these three columns: ID, stu name, and stu age. And since we have not added any of the rows in this table, that is why we are not getting any of the rows over here. Okay. Now suppose you don't want all these three columns. I only want student ID and student name. I can just omit this student age statement from here and just execute these two only. So I will be getting these two columns only. Okay. Right now in our table, only three columns are present. So we are able to just write the name of these three columns and execute them. Okay. It is pretty simple. But in the real world, this is not possible. There is a condition where there might be multiple columns. It could be around 50, 60, any number of columns present in a table. So you should not be like sitting there and writing all those 50, 60 names with a comma separated values so that you can just select those columns from the table. No, that's not the way to do things. So for that purpose, in SQL, we have something called as star. Star or asterisk stands for all, which means select all from. Then you need to specify the name of the table, that is student table. Okay. So this statement reads as select all from student table, which means all the columns would be selected by default. You need to just select this and click on execute. So you can see by default we had three columns in this table. So only the three columns are shown over here. But if we had more than three columns, they all would have been shown. Similarly, we can write any other statement, like we had another table here known as employee table. We can write select all from employee table, and you can just select this and click on execute. So yeah, we are getting the three column headings for the employee table, right? So this also makes us aware of the fact that SQL is a case insensitive language. I could write from in all caps or in all smalls or whatever I want to do, but it is always advisable to not write something like this. It is valid, but it's not readable. So either go for all upper cases or all lower cases. Okay. Now the question is, how can you just insert the values into your tables? We have seen how can we create table. We have seen how can we select the columns from the table, but how can we insert the values in the table? So let's say we want to insert some values into the student table. So for that purpose, you need to use this insert into statement. First of all, you need to write this insert into, then you need to write the table name. So suppose I want to insert the values into the student table. So I can write insert into student table, and then you need to specify the columns in which you want to insert the value. So we know that ID column in the student table is indexed, or it is an identity column, right? So we do not need to specify its value. It would be incremented automatically, or it would be generated automatically by SQL. We only need to provide the values for the student name and student age. So we need to specify the name of the column, that I want to give the value for stu name, put a comma, and then the second column, that is for student age. Insert into the table name, and within the parentheses all the columns where you want to insert the value. Then in the very next line, you need to write this again keyword values, and after that you need to put a parenthesis and write all the values that you want to insert. Suppose in the student name I want to insert like Roger, and in the student age I want 23. Okay, so let's just execute it. So you will get the message like this: one row affected, which means that okay, you have added one row into your table. Now if you want to see the table data, you can just select either this statement or this statement and click on execute. See, ID is already generated automatically. This one is the row number. Then we have got the student name as Roger and the student age as 23. Now you must be wondering what is this over here. So this is actually, since Roger is a string value, it is a combination of characters. That is why we have written it in the single quotes. That is a convention in SQL, that whenever you are trying to enter any of the string values or any of the date values, you need to write that in the single quotes. So we can using this statement insert multiple values. Like we can just copy it and paste it, and instead of Roger, let's say some other name like Albert. Okay, and then we can just change the age to like 34. We can select this statement, execute it, and then again we can just show this select all from student table. So you can see we are getting the two names, the two IDs, that is 1, 2, student name as Roger, its age, student name and age, and these 1, 2 are the row numbers. Okay, so that's how the things works. That's how you can insert the values into a table, and that's how you can show the values for yourself from a table in SQL. So these are the basics that we have learned in today's video. That's all. Thanks for watching.